Welcome into the latest edition of Tampa 2. Casey Phillips here with staff writer Brianna Dix, and we are here to get you ready for this so important Carolina Panthers game. Holy moly. I don't think I've been this excited for a game in a while.
Yeah.
This is going to be a fun one. So first, of course, let's start with our wrap-up of the Cardinals game. What were some of the big things that stood out to you?
Well, I think for me, once again, they put it together in crunch time. You know, despite the offense's really inability to convert on those third down, you know, you saw the short yardage issues, the penalties, all of these things that consistently crept up. But at the end of the game, when they were down by 10 with 11 minutes to play, you know, you had Leonard Fournette's 44-yard catch and run that yet led to Rachaad White's touchdown. And then in overtime, Brady went 6 for 6. That led to Ryan Succop's field goal, and whether that was, you know, the pump fake to Gage, whether it was the 16-yarder to Mike Evans, where Fournette paved the way for that with his pickup of the A and B gap blitzers. It was just encouraging to see the team be able to do it.
Yes.
You know, they put it all together, and really the defense played phenomenal all game. They kept Trace McSorley off balance. They only allowed one touchdown, which was kind of gifted to them off of that special teams gaffe. So I think the biggest thing for me going into this Panthers game is, okay, can this team, and we've talked about it all season long, I feel like till we're blue in the face, but can you play a full 4 quarters? Can they play 60 minutes of football and play complementary on both sides of the ball where the offense isn't having to play catch up?
Yes. It is so nice to know that if you keep it close, you can feel good about the defense getting the stops, but B, this offense being just phenomenal in the 2-minute, phenomenal in the comeback situation. So it's great to know you have that. You don't want to rely on that or need it. But this time of year and going into the playoffs, that is a great thing to know. If you can have a defense that's holding them where you just know it's at least close within one possession, and you have a guy like Tom Brady that can lead that 2-minute offense, you've got to have that belief then that it's possible, and I think that's really important. But yeah, I mean, I know that it also is very exhausting to have to continue to win this way. You know, I heard a stat, I think it was maybe Sean Payton said it on one of the broadcasts a week ago, that he had picked against the Bucs after their come-from-behind victory against the Saints, because he said there was some stat like teams are 0-25. I wish I had written it down when I heard it, but 0-25 or something crazy like that coming off of a dramatic game-winning drive. And I thought that was so interesting because I always thought of it as, oh, look at all this momentum it would give them moving forward. But apparently it sounds a little bit more like it's a little hard to maybe get up again that next week or something, that it takes so much out of you to have to win that way. But I just thought, and that kind of stat of 0-25 or something crazy, like it didn't sound like a coincidence kind of stat. Like that blew my mind. So keeping that in mind, that, you know, this last game took a lot out of the Bucs potentially. At least this is a game against the Panthers that, man, there are a million reasons to be up for it.
So the urgency is there.
Yeah, so hopefully it will counter whatever that sort of thing is, that intangible thing that could lead to a weird stat like that. But I think that it was so great to see they could do that. And I think, man, again, Ryan Succop, as much as kickers are never the glamorous thing to talk about, if we think back to training camp and there was this kicker battle and it was not at all a given who was going to be our kicker. And I have to imagine the team, you know, of course, Borregales was great, and maybe he would have gone on to have the same season that Ryan has. We'll never know that, but you have to feel good about the fact that you stuck with Ryan Succop, that reliability, that consistency, to know that in games like this, where of course they want 7, but again, when you go into these December games that really matter, these January games that really matter, to know you have that kind of kicker has got to make them feel really good.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's talk now about the keys to this Panthers game. I have a feeling I know what you're going to say.
Yes, I think we've all been talking about it all week. It's been the theme, but stopping the run. This is a team that is predicated on running the football. And I mean, just look at what they did against the Lions last week. They had a franchise record 320 yards. And I mean, really what they do.
Ridiculous.
That's
more than teams have of all kinds of yards in a game.
But they have that dual explosive tandem with Chuba Hubbard, with Deontay Foreman. And I think when you look at what they do to complement one another, Deontay Foreman kind of has the power. He's that one-cut downhill runner, is almost impossible to get down in the open field. But then you've got that slippery slash style guy in Chuba Hubbard that just thrives in that outside zone, can bounce runs outside. So I think it's, okay, how can the Bucs stop those runs between the tackles, but also the perimeter threat with Hubbard? How are they able to set the edge? Because if they can get that rolling, that is what their offense is based on. And then you also have the threat of Sam Darnold, using his legs, that mobility that really works in those zone reads. So that's what I'm looking for this week with the Bucs.
Yeah, I was just blown away by what they did against the Lions. And
Yeah.
the Lions are one of the hottest teams in the league lately. It's not like this was some gimme kind of team, and they like to play tough. And so to be able to produce that kind of amount of rushing yards, and that also meant they produced 570 yards total.
Yeah.
That's outrageous.
It is.
That is outrageous.
Well, and it's even more impressive, too, when you think about, okay, teams have that much footage over the span of this season. They know what you're going to do. It's no secret. They've seen all of this film that they have to look at now, but yet they're still able to have that kind of success in December when it's coming is even more impressive that they're hitting their stride now.
Yeah, it's incredible. And I know that in some ways it makes me feel better about the Bucs' loss to them earlier in the year. We just happened to play them right when they seemed to be, I don't want to say tanking, but just deciding to rebuild. That they were selling off assets, they were firing their head coach, and so it felt horrible when the Bucs lost because it felt like you lost to a team that was giving up. And then now you see what the Panthers have done. You see that they are one of the hottest teams in the league, the way they've been playing. So I think that if anything, it makes me feel a little bit better about that first game of that wasn't as much an indictment on the Bucs as it was a statement of what this Panthers team was going to be. But it does not make me feel better about this game because it was not a fluke that they are a team that knows how to get it done, and their formula looks like it can be really effective for December games, for the playoffs. If you can run like that, that is so tough because you're keeping the other team off the field so much. You're just pounding it down their throats. It's such a demoralizing way to play. I just think that they have such an incredible formula there. And so, stopping the run is going to be everything with them. And it's just going to be so interesting because we're so used to that being the strength of the Bucs. We're so used to that these last few years. And then this year, for whatever reason, it just hasn't happened quite as much. And I do think a lot of times the stats are what they are because of allowing one or two really big gash runs too, that kind of inflates the stats and that kind of thing. So, I think that it's incredible you want to stop the run every week. We always say that's a key to a game, but it feels like the only key to this game practically, which is crazy. So along those lines, what would be your matchup to watch of this game?
I think kind of along the same lines, it's going to hinge a lot in the trenches, really on both sides of the ball for the Buccaneers. But I think one of the keys matchups that I'm looking for is our offensive line versus the Panthers' defensive line. They have so much athleticism on their defensive line with Derek Brown, with Brian Burns. So I think for me it's, Nick Leverett versus Derek Brown, and then Tristan Wirfs versus Brian Burns. And with Brown, he's just a monster at the point of attack, can push the pocket with the bull rush. So I think, how is the interior able to hold up against him, whether getting in the backfield, trying to stop a run, or getting to the quarterback, his closing speed. How is Nick able to counter that? And then also with Brian Burns, they move him around to try and create those advantageous one-on-one matchups. But, he has one of the most explosive get-offs in the NFL. And Tristan talked about it earlier in the season when they played them, but just the way that he's able to bait tackles, and because of his speed, they tend to kind of commit to his speed rush, and then he's able to get home with a spin. So how does that look across the line with just his explosion and what they're able to do? Can the Bucs keep Tom Brady upright, and can they get the run game going?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, basically for me, the matchup is Foreman and Hubbard versus everyone. You know, is I feel like that's a cop out, but it's like I do think it's going to take everyone, especially with how many injuries the Bucs have on defense. I think that if I had to pick a specific player for the matchup against them, I might say Devin White, just because knowing, you know, we still at this point of taping this don't know if Vita Vea is going to be able to go, and to try to offer some of that A gap help is going to be really big, especially when, I mean, we've even seen that, you know, Raheem Nunez-Roches hasn't participated because of personal reasons this week. Like, there's just a lot up in the air about what that front will look like, and it's going to be so much about being fundamentally sound. Can Devin be doing the communication necessary and help with some of those interior gaps, help on that run stopping? I think it's going to be a big game for him, knowing that especially for he and Levante both, they're the only position group completely healthy, essentially, in terms of not appearing on the injury report. So I think that you need to lean a lot on those guys when every other position group, you might be missing someone, or guys aren't really playing at 100%. I mean, no one's playing at 100% in December, but they're the only guys that position group is not accounted for on the defense on the injury report.
Right.
So I think that's going to be a really big one. How about a player to watch for you?
I am going to go with Joe Tryon-Shoyinka. I think this could be a really big game for him, both him and Anthony Nelson, with the injuries to the outside linebacker group, with Jannard Avery on injured reserve, and then you've had Carl Nassib out with the pec injury. So, I mean, really over these last two games, they've played every snap, but Joe has had 5 quarterback hits over that span of those 2 games. But I think he's going to be really crucial in setting the edge against a guy like Hubbard that tends to go more on those edge runs. But also, if you have, you know, someone crashes in or they overset inside, well, then you're leaving a gaping hole for either Hubbard, for Foreman, or for Sam Darnold to exploit on the edge. So how are they able to do that, and can they keep that to a minimum? I think is going to be really big, and he could end up having a breakout game this week.
I think that's great. I mean, it is just crazy the way that Anthony Nelson and Joe Tryon-Shoyinka have played every single snap these last couple games, and that is a hard position to do that at, because you're just going a million miles an hour
Full
every time.
speed,
Like, you are fighting
For
with
a
that
full
lineman,
game.
going crazy for a full game, and to still have production when you're probably pretty tired. I think that's going to be huge. It'll be interesting to see. You know, Carl Nassib did return to practice in a limited area this week, so hopefully he's able to go and at least
Kind of give
them
them
a
some
breather.
relief. Yeah.
Even if he's not 100%, like, just go out there for a few plays, help those guys out, you know? I think for me, the player, this is so funny. I thought about this morning. Have either of us picked Tom Brady at any point this season as a player to watch?
I honestly don't think we have.
I don't think we have, and I think it's so funny. I think it's like, almost with Brady, it's like we just don't even feel the need to talk about him. It's so funny. It's like we're just like, well, yeah, obviously he's a player to watch. But I'm like, we probably should pick him occasionally as a player to watch. And I was thinking about going with him this week because this is a man that knows how to get into the playoffs. And he's
done it a few times
Done
before.
it just a few times.
Just a couple.
I believe he's only missed it twice in his whole career. And one was with an ACL tear. One was just his second year in the league. That's it. I think he's made it every other year than that. And we've seen that whether it's these game-winning drives, that when the stakes are high, that is when Brady shines. And I think also just this, all the turnovers and things that have happened lately, I have to imagine that he is extra fired up this game. That is not something that is going to happen again. It's already seemed crazy that it's happened as much as it has.
Right.
I have just a very hard time imagining it's going to happen again. And I loved he talked about in his press conference this week that how much he needs to work to get Mike Evans the ball more. So Mike Evans was actually going to be my other pick because he's another guy that you give him a chip on the shoulder, you give him something, you know, to fight against. And he's got to be imagining the way that the Panthers game started, where he had that wide open touchdown and in the most uncharacteristic fashion dropped it. And I feel like Brady and Evans both just have things to prove this week. And for guys like that have been in the league for this long, to have those chip on the shoulder moments, to have those things to prove, I have to imagine that connection is going to be better. And, you know, the Panthers secondary is really beat up. So I have to imagine that this could be a game where the two of them get more on the same page, have a bigger game. And that's what this offense is going to need. So, and on that front, in terms of talking about who is banged up, take us through the injury report for both teams, maybe the things that stand out to you about it.
Yeah, so Carlton Davis still hasn't practiced this week dealing with a shoulder injury, but I think it was encouraging to see that you had some guys come back. You know, Kate Otten was back, full participation, and then you had Anthony Nelson back with the illness to give some of those outside linebackers a break. But then also you had a lot of guys participating in a limited fashion.
Yep.
You know, you had Jamel Dean, you had Mike Edwards, you had Julio Jones, Donovan Smith, Vita Vea, Antoine, and then Tristan Wirfs.
Yep.
So I think it'll be interesting to see how they progress the rest of this week. And obviously we're filming this on Friday morning, so we haven't gotten Todd Bowles' update after Friday's practice, which he typically goes into more of kind of the nitty-gritty on some of the player statuses for the game. So
yeah, it's
hopefully.
Just to see Donovan Smith and Tristan Wirfs both on their limited, and we now know, we don't have Josh Wells the rest of the year.
At least doing something in some capacity.
They're doing some football things, which is great. But yeah, you wonder at what percent. I have a hard time imagining those guys won't be playing, but you always wonder at what percent, at what capacity are they going to be at? What is that going to mean for how they look? And of course, we haven't even talked about the biggest injury news of the week, which is Ryan Jensen returning to practice.
Yes.
Huge deal. 5 months, almost to the day after his injury. Now, Coach has said he will not be playing this Sunday. But in your mind, when do you think we could see him, and what is that going to mean for this offensive line in terms of who plays, who doesn't?
Right. I think it's just, honestly, regardless of when he does come back, I think it's really encouraging for that whole entire team and just really emboldening to see what a significant knee injury he had, for him to be back out there, for him to be suiting up and at least doing something, but just to have his presence. You know, I mean, he is the anchor of that line, Pro Bowl center, so just to see him out there has to be extremely encouraging for all of those guys.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they haven't really disclosed what this timeline will be, and honestly, at this point, I don't really even think they know. It's just a matter of taking it day by day, seeing what he's able to do and how he's able to progress. Todd Bowles, I mean, immediately shut down when asked about potentially going against the Panthers, so we'll see what ends up happening next week against the Falcons for season finale, or it may just be, hey, let's hold him until potentially that playoff spot, depending on what happens.
Yeah, this is going to be so interesting, and this game is just so fascinating this weekend. I mean, of course, I wish Jensen could be available for it, but even if not, there's going to be Bruce Arians' Ring of Honor induction. This is a win and you're in for the playoffs, and and just the Panthers are a team that I just am so intrigued by them this year, of what they've done when everybody counted them out. And Sam Darnold, now this is a big difference. Of we went against PJ Walker the first time. Now you have Sam Darnold, and we talked so much about the run game, and they've gotten the reputation of that being all their offense does. But I want you to think about this. Okay, so since week 12, Darnold leads the NFL in yards per attempt, and he has the 5th best passer rating in that time, and hasn't turned the ball over this year. It's not like they're winning despite Sam Darnold.
Yes.
He's doing some good things as
focal
well.
Point of that offense too.
Yeah, and so I just think that this is going to be, like we talked about earlier, you've got to play a complete game. When they can run the ball the way they do, Darnold isn't making mistakes. He's complementing that run game well. I just think you're going to have to really be on your P's and Q's, and thankfully the defense has been playing really well all season. But yeah, I think your offense is going to have to get 7 and not 3, because I don't think you're going to get the ball that often. That when they're able to do this, they're going to have the ball a lot. And so I think you need to be capitalizing that. You cannot have 3 and outs where you're getting your defense exhausted. You've got to stay on the field longer. You need some of those 12, 14 play drives, and you need 7. That this is not a team you want to.
3.
So all right, we'll close with this. Our quote of the week. What do you got?
I am going to go with a quote from pass game coordinator and inside linebackers coach Larry Foote.
Dang it, I am too. I bet we're going to do the same one.
It is on Carolina's run game.
Of course it is. It was too good.
It is too good. So it just kind of made me giggle. But he said, Gotta bring your big boy pants.
How could we not both pick that?
I know.
It was required.
It was too good. You've got to be gap sound. You've got to be physical and bring that demeanor to the game. They've got big backs. Number 33, Deontay Foreman is a big guy. Number 30, Chuba Hubbard is slashing. But you've got to be gap sound. You've got to know what to do about the ball. You've got to know where your help is at and play fundamentally sound up front. You've got to be willing and ready to come meet it head on.
Yep.
And I think that is going to be one of those things that's really big this week is knowing where your help is, guys not playing hero ball, trying to do too much, and then vacating a gap and leaving a gaping hole.
Yes.
But I loved his verbiage on that.
Gotta get your big boy pants on. You know what? What a way to start the new year. We all gotta get our big boy pants on. You know, stick to those resolutions. Go to the gym. You know,
that's crazy.
Whatever it is, we all gotta put our big boy pants on. I mean, what a way to. I think that's the perfect way to end the show. I think that quote sums up everything the Bucs need to do, and probably that we all need to do.
Yeah.
All right, well, that is going to do it for us on this edition of Tampa 2. Thanks for being with us, and we will be back next week, hopefully, talking about how the Bucs have secured a playoff home game. So we'll see you then.